The day started like any other for the Galactic Council. The meeting hall floated above the blue planet of Virelia, a neutral world where many species came to talk, argue, and sometimes yell at each other. Today was supposed to be another boring session about trade routes and border disputes. But then the humans arrived. They showed up in a ship called the USS Liberty, a small but clean vessel with no markings from any known space group. Its design was simple, almost plain compared to the sleek warships of the Catharn or the crystal domes of the Zilari. When it appeared on long-range sensors, the Council thought it might be a lost trader or a rogue explorer. But then it spoke. "This is Captain Lisa Hartley of the United States Starship Liberty," came the voice over the open channel. "We come in peace, requesting permission to dock." There were a few seconds of silence. Then, over the Council's main comm line, someone asked, "Who are you?" Earth?" said Lisa. "Solar system? Third rock from the sun?" More silence. Finally, after some quick checks, the Council realized that yes, this ship had come from a star system they had only recently begun watching. Humans were not advanced enough to build ships that could cross stars. Yet here they were. A decision was made quickly. The humans would be allowed to dock, under heavy guard. And they would meet the Council. When Captain Lisa Hartley stepped off the Liberty, she looked calm if a little tired. Behind her stood Dan Murray, the ship's chief engineer, and Ensign Bobby Carson, who looked like he might throw up. They were met by a team of security drones and a tall, four-eyed alien named Vrel Tak, the lead scientist of the Zilari delegation. "You claim to be from Sol?" Vrel Tak asked, his voice deep and clicking. "Yes, sir," Lisa said, offering a polite smile. "How did you reach this location?" he asked. "FTL Drive," Dan said proudly before Lisa could stop him. Vrel Tak blinked, slowly. "Your FTL drive brought you across 12 parsecs in less than an hour." "Well, yeah," Dan said. "It's standard." "Standard?" Vrel Tak repeated. "Sure," Dan said. "We use quantum resonance fields to fold space-time and ride the dark matter filaments like invisible highways. It's efficient." The Zilari diplomat stared at him. So did everyone else. After a pause, Vrel Tak turned to his assistant and whispered something in Zilari. The assistant paled. Meanwhile, Bobby Carson tried to make small talk with a nearby drone. Nice place. You got up here?" He was ignored. Inside the Council chamber, things got stranger. Lisa and Dan sat at the center of a large circular room filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some had scales, others had fur, and one looked like a walking tree with eyes. They all watched the two humans closely. "Please explain your travel method again," said a Threxian general, arms crossed. Dan nodded. "Okay. So we don't use warp fields or jump gates. Instead, we thread through reality by syncing our ship's energy field with the dark matter grid. Once we match the frequency, we phase out and move along the filaments. It's faster than light, but we're not really moving. More like slipping between spaces." No one said anything. A young Lyranian scientist raised a hand. "But how do you control direction? Stability? Wouldn't that tear apart most ships?" Dan smiled. "We built a special core that uses harmonic resonance. Think of it like tuning a guitar string. Once you find the right note, the whole thing just flows." Again, silence. Finally, Vrel Tak leaned forward. "What kind of power source allows this?" "Fusion batteries," Lisa said, "with a little help from zero-point energy cells." Now, even the Threxian general looked stunned. "You're saying," Vrel Tak said slowly, "that you have developed a stable mobile FTL system powered by fusion and zero-point energy?" "Yeah," Dan said. "Isn't that normal?" The room exploded into voices. Some aliens argued. Others stared at their screens trying to run calculations. A few just sat there, frozen. One Zilari scientist whispered, "This should not be possible." Later that evening, in a private meeting room, the Council leaders gathered without the humans present. "They shouldn't be here," said the Threxian general. "Their technology breaks every rule we know." "But it works," said a Lyranian diplomat. "And they don't even realize how dangerous it is." Dangerous? The Catharn ambassador growled. They phase through space like ghosts. What happens if they phase through a planet? Or worse, said Vreltok. What if they bring something back with them? There was a long pause. Then the head of the council, an old Virelian named Nalathir, finally spoke. We need to learn everything we can before they go anywhere else. Should we let them leave at all? The Threxian general asked. Nalathir looked at the screen showing the USS Liberty. It sat quietly in orbit, small and unassuming. No, she said, we cannot stop them now. But we must understand what they've done before someone else tries to copy it. Or before it copies them. Back aboard the Liberty, Lisa and Dan sat in the mess hall with Bobby. Do you think they liked us? Bobby asked. I think they were confused, Lisa said. Terrified, Dan added. Good confused or bad terrified? Bobby asked. Dan thought for a moment. Probably both. Outside the window, the station lights blinked softly. Somewhere, far away, a sensor picked up a faint anomaly, but no one noticed. Not yet. After the first meeting, the Galactic Council needed time to think. They had never seen anything like what the humans described. Their technology didn't match any known form of faster-than-light travel. No warp fields, no jump gates, no wormholes, just slipping through space like ghosts. But Lisa Hartley and Dan Murray were not about to let things sit in silence. If you want proof, Lisa said during the next session, we can show you. Vreltok, the auxiliary scientist, blinked, slowly. You can demonstrate this FTL method? Sure, Dan said with a grin. It's easier than explaining it. The council agreed. Reluctantly, they set up observation points across the station and on nearby ships. Sensors were turned on. Cameras were pointed at the USS Liberty Elmby, which still sat quietly in orbit. Then came the message from the humans. Stand by for demonstration. Everyone watched as the Liberty floated in space, calm and steady. And then, it was gone. Not vanished in a flash of light or a burst of energy. One moment it was there, the next, it wasn't. What the? Someone shouted. Where did it go? A Threxian officer growled. A second later, an alarm blared. Contact inside the station. Every head turned to the main screen. There, clear as day, the USS Liberty hovered inside the central docking bay, a place it had not been cleared to enter. Panic spread quickly. How did it get in here? No signal, no approach vector. Shields were up. It shouldn't have passed through. Dan's voice came over the comm. Just a quick stop to say hello. We'll be back outside in a sec. And then just like that, the ship vanished again. This time it reappeared near the far edge of the system, almost a full planetary orbit away. In less than a heartbeat. The entire room was silent. Even, the machines seemed to pause. In the control center, scientists scrambled to make sense of what they had seen. There was no warp signature, one said. No gravity distortions, another added. No energy spikes, said a third. Nothing. That's not possible, Vreltok muttered. Something must have hidden the readings. We triple-checked, said a young Lyranian tech. The data shows nothing. Then how? Asked a Catharn diplomat. No one had an answer. Meanwhile, aboard the Liberty, Dan was smiling. Told you they'd be impressed, he said to Lisa. She looked out the window, watching the station lights blink nervously. Impressed isn't exactly the word I'd use, she said. Bobby Carson, still pale, leaned against the wall. Did we really just teleport into their most secure dock? Technically, Dan said. Yes, but also no. We threaded. We didn't break any laws of physics. You don't know that, Lisa said. Well, not yet, Dan admitted. Back on the station, the council was already holding a closed-door emergency meeting. This is not normal, the Threxian general said. They are hiding something. Or, they're playing games, said the Catharn ambassador. Either way, said Nalathir, the head of the council, we cannot allow them to move freely like that. Too late, said a tech who had just entered. They've already sent messages to other human ships. Other ships? Someone asked. Yes, the tech said. There are more of them out there. the room filled with whispers. Some feared invasion, others feared chaos because if the humans could move anywhere, anytime without warning, who could stop them? Later that night, Lisa and Dan were called back to the chamber. This time, the mood was colder. "You understand," Nalathir said, "that what you did today has caused concern." "Concern?" the Threxian general barked. "You teleported into our most secure location," threaded. Dan corrected. "Whatever you call it," said the Catharn ambassador. "You broke every rule of safe travel." "We followed all protocols," Lisa said calmly. "We made sure no one was in danger." "You were inside a protected zone," Vreltok said, "without clearance." "We didn't mean to scare anyone," Lisa said. "Then explain," Vreltok said. "Explain how your drive works in terms we can understand." Dan smiled. "Sure," he said. "Want me to draw it out too?" He started talking about dark matter filaments, about quantum threading, about phase jumps and harmonic resonance. The council listened and tried very hard to understand. But after 10 minutes, even the smartest minds in the galaxy were lost. Finally, Vreltok raised a hand. "Stop," he said. "Your math does not follow known physics." "Maybe your physics is wrong," Dan said. Silence. Then, a few quiet gasps. "Do you even realize," Vreltok said slowly, "what you might have done?" Dan frowned. "We just wanted to show off the ride." Outside, in deep space, the Liberty sat alone. And somewhere, far beyond the edges of known systems, something shifted. Something old. Something that had been waiting. And now, maybe, it had felt the thread. The council had asked for answers. Dan Murray was more than happy to give them. Back in the meeting room, he stood with a small pad in hand and a big grin on his face. Lisa sat nearby, arms crossed, watching carefully. Bobby Carson looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "So," Dan said, "where were we?" "You were about to break reality," muttered the Threxian general. Dan ignored him and tapped his pad. A hollow display appeared above the table, a simple diagram showing lines and waves glowing faintly in blue light. "This is what we call the dark matter grid," Dan explained. "It's everywhere, but most people ignore it because it doesn't interact with normal matter." Vreltok, the Zilari scientist, leaned forward. "We know this, but dark matter cannot be used for travel." Dan smiled. "Normally, you'd be right. But we found a way to sync our ship's energy field with the grid. Once we do that, we can thread through space instead of moving through it." "Thread?" someone asked. "Like a needle through cloth," Dan said. "Except the cloth is space itself." A murmur spread around the room. "You're saying," said a Lyranian diplomat, "that your ship doesn't move in the traditional sense?" "Exactly," Dan said. "We phase out of normal reality and ride along the filaments of dark matter. It's faster than light, but we don't actually break any speed limits. Because you're not in space," Vreltok whispered, eyes wide. "Bingo," Dan said. There was silence. Then came the questions. "How do you control direction? What stabilizes your position? How do you return to normal space?" Dan answered each one calmly, using diagrams and math that made no sense to anyone else. Even the smartest scientists in the room struggled to follow. "This should not work," Vreltok said after a while. "Your equations violate at least 4 known laws of physics." Dan shrugged. "Maybe your laws are outdated." More silence. Nalathir, the head of the council, finally spoke. "Have there been any side effects?" Lisa cleared her throat. "Some crew members report strange dreams. Others say time feels off." "Off how?" Nalathir asked. Dan frowned. "Once we jumped and came back 10 minutes before we left." "What?" the Catharn ambassador gasped. "It was weird," Lisa admitted. "We double-checked everything. Turns out from the outside we hadn't even left yet." "But you did leave," Vreltok said slowly. "Yeah," Dan said, "and came back before we went." "This is impossible," the Threxian general growled. "Not." "If you're threading," Dan said, "then stop doing it," the general snapped. Dan blinked. "Why?" "Because you are playing with forces you do not understand," the general said. You could tear holes in space. Dan laughed. If we do, we'll patch them. No one else laughed. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Liberty, things were quiet, or almost quiet. Ensign Bobby Carson sat alone in the mess hall, staring at his coffee. It wasn't the coffee that worried him. It was the way it sometimes moved when he wasn't looking. He watched it now. Still, he let out a breath. Okay, he whispered. Just relax, it's just fatigue. Yeah. He reached for the cup. As his fingers touched it, the liquid inside rippled. But he hadn't moved. He froze. Then, very slowly, he looked up. The lights flickered, once, twice. Then they stayed dim. Bobby stood quickly, heart pounding. Anyone there? He called. No answer. He turned and walked fast toward the door. As he passed a window, he saw something outside. Just for a second. A shape, long and thin. Watching. Then gone. He stumbled back. His radio crackled. Bobby, came Dan's voice. You, okay. Yeah, Bobby said, trying to sound calm. Just thought I saw something. Well, come back to the lab. We've got more explaining to do. Sure, Bobby said quietly. I'll be right there. He looked at the window again. Nothing. But he knew something had seen him. Back in the council chamber, the discussion had taken a darker turn. They do not realize the danger, said Reltok. Or they do, and they don't care, said the Threxian general. Either way, Nalathir said, we must find a way to contain this. Contain? Asked the Lyranian diplomat. Do you mean stop them? Perhaps, Nalathir said. Or learn from them before someone else does. Someone already has, said a tech who had just entered. We picked up a signal from deep space, unknown origin. It matches the Yai human FTL signature. The room fell silent. They're not the only ones anymore, the tech added, somewhere far away. In the cold black of space, a new shape appeared. Silent, fast, unseen, and threading. The council wanted answers. Dan Murray had them, but not the kind they were hoping for. After the meeting ended, Vareltok asked to speak with Lisa and Dan in private. They met in a small room filled with glowing screens and quiet machines that hummed softly in the background. You must understand, Vreltok said, his voice low. What you are doing is dangerous. Dan leaned back in his chair. We've heard that already. But have you truly thought about the cost? Vreltok asked. Lisa crossed her arms. We know there are side effects. Vreltok's eyes widened slightly. Then tell me what they are. Dan looked at Lisa. She gave a small nod. He sighed. Well, some crew members have started having strange dreams. Dreams, Vreltok repeated. Not normal ones, Dan said. They wake up tired. Sometimes they remember things that never happened. Places we've never been. People we don't know. And it's not just dreams, Lisa added. Some of our people say time feels wrong. Wrong how? Dan rubbed his face. Like it slips. Like they're a second behind or ahead of everyone else. Once, Bobby Carson swore he saw someone who wasn't there. And then there was the jump where we came back before we left, Lisa said. Vreltok sat very still. You returned to a time before your departure? Technically, yes, Dan said, but only by 10 minutes. That should not be possible, Vreltok whispered. Well, it happened, Lisa said. Vreltok stood and walked to the window. Outside, stars blinked quietly in the dark. Do you know why this happens? He asked. Dan shook his head. We think it has to do with threading, too deep into the grid, like we're brushing against something we weren't meant to touch. Vreltok turned back to them. And yet you keep using this drive. Of course, Dan said. It works, and it gets us where we need to go. But at what cost? Vreltok asked. Dan didn't answer right away. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Liberty E, Bobby Carson couldn't sleep. He sat alone in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. His body was tired, but his mind was wide awake. His dreams had gotten worse. In one, he stood on a world covered in black trees that whispered his name. In another, he floated in space watching Earth burn. And last night he saw himself, standing outside his own door, watching, waiting. He shivered, just thinking about it. A soft knock pulled him from his thoughts. He jumped. "Bobby?" came Dan's voice. "You awake?" "Yeah," Bobby said, forcing calm into his voice. "Come in." The door opened and Dan stepped inside holding a tablet. "Can't sleep either?" Dan asked. "Something like that," Bobby said. Dan sat down across from him. "I know what you saw." Bobby stiffened. "What?" On the mess hall window, Dan said. "You saw something out there." Bobby swallowed hard. "You believe me?" "Yes," Dan said, "because I've seen it too." Bobby stared at him. "It's not just dreams," Dan said. "Something is happening when we thread. Something we don't understand." "Should we stop?" Bobby asked. Dan looked away. "Lisa says no, not yet." "But what if it's dangerous?" Dan stood slowly. "Then we'll deal with it, like we always do." Before he left, he paused at the door. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow we might have company." "Company?" Bobby asked. Dan looked back. "Someone else used our drive." Bobby felt cold. Somewhere far away, in the dark between stars, something moved. It was not human. It did not belong. But now it could thread. Back on the station, Vreltok reported to the council. "They know," he said, "about the side effects." "And they continue?" The Threxian general growled. "Yes," Vreltok said. "They claim it is worth the risk." "Fools," the Catharn ambassador muttered. Nalathir, the head of the council, looked troubled. "If they are fools, then they are dangerous ones. Then we must act," the general said. "Confiscate their ship. Stop them before they bring something back with them. Or worse," Vreltok said quietly, "before they leave something behind." Silence fell over the room. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant, and somewhere unseen something watched, waited, threaded. The news spread fast. Too fast. Within hours, every major species in the Galactic Council had been informed of what the humans had done, and what they were still doing. Some called it a miracle. Others called it madness. But most agreed on one thing. Something needed to be done. An emergency summit was called. All major delegations were invited. The meeting took place not on the station this time, but aboard the Varelian Command Hub, a massive floating fortress that served as the heart of interstellar diplomacy. Its halls filled with diplomats, scientists, soldiers, and spies from across the galaxy. Tension was high. "This is unacceptable," said Threxian General Kovac. "They are playing with forces we do not understand." "And yet," said Lyranian diplomat Ellis, "they seem to control it." "Control?" Kovac snapped. "They return before they leave. Their crew sees ghosts, and now someone else has used their drive." Silence followed. Nalathir, head of the council, looked tired. She sat at the center of the room, her glowing eyes scanning the gathered leaders. "We must decide," she said. "What comes next?" A Catharn ambassador stood. His skin shimmered like wet stone. "I say we confiscate the ship," he said, "before more damage is done." "Confiscate?" Ellis asked. "You mean steal it?" "If we must," the Catharn said. Vreltok, the Zilari scientist, shook his head. "We cannot take what we do not understand." "Then we destroy it," said General Kovac. Murmurs of agreement rose. But then came a voice from the back. "And if we can't?" Everyone turned. It was a young tech from the observation team. He held a tablet in shaking hands. "We picked up another signal," he said. "Not from the humans this time." He tapped the screen. A new FTL jump signature appeared. Same pattern, same structure, but not from Earth. Not from the Liberty. Someone else had learned to thread. The room exploded into noise. Who? Someone shouted. How? Asked another. Can we stop them? Demanded General Kovac. The tech swallowed hard. We don't know who it is. The signal came from deep space, beyond known systems. Silence returned. Slowly, Nalathir stood. This changes everything, she said. The technology is no longer in human hands alone, it is out there. Then we must act, Vreltok said, before it spreads further. Yes, Nalathir agreed. But how? No one had an answer. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Liberty E, Lisa Hartley stared at the latest report. Dan stood beside her. So, he said, someone else is threading. Looks like it, Lisa said. You think it's one of the council races trying to copy us? Could be, she said. Or it could be something else. Dan frowned. Like what? I don't know, Lisa admitted. But if someone figured this out on their own, they might not be following our safety rules. Dan thought about Bobby's dreams, about the shape outside the window, about the way time sometimes slipped. Yeah, he said quietly. That worries me too. Just then the comm light blinked. Incoming message. Lisa tapped it. On the screen, a stern-looking woman appeared. Admiral June Carter, commander of Earth's Deep Space Fleet. Captain Hartley, she said. I hope you're ready for company. Company? Lisa asked. Earth is sending more ships, Admiral Carter said. Diplomatic vessels, all equipped with threaded drives. Dan's eyes went wide. Wait, you're saying... Yes, the Admiral said. We're not hiding this anymore. The galaxy needs to see what we can do. Dan looked at Lisa. She looked worried. Admiral, Lisa said carefully, are you sure this is the best move right now? It's already done, Admiral Carter said. Ships are jumping as we speak. And just like that, the situation changed. Back at the summit, the Council received the news at almost the same time. Earth is deploying more ships, said a tech, voice trembling. More? General Kovac growled. Armed? Asked the Catharn ambassador. No, the tech said. They're labeled as diplomatic vessels. Still, Ellis said, they are spreading the technology. They are showing off, Vreltok muttered. Nalathir looked at the map showing human movements. Dozens of new signals appeared across the galaxy, jumping, threading, appearing without warning. Some near trade routes, some close to military bases. All over the place. They don't ask permission, said a Threxian officer. They just go. And now, Vreltok said slowly, others will follow. No one spoke, because they all knew. The galaxy had changed, and there was no going back. The galaxy wasn't ready for what came next. Within days, human ships began appearing all over known space. They didn't arrive with fanfare or war horns, just sudden, quiet arrivals that made sensors scream and crews panic. One moment, there was nothing on radar. The next, a ship was already there, and not just one ship. Dozens. They called themselves diplomatic vessels, but they carried the same FTL drive as the USS Liberty. They jumped without warning, showed up in places they weren't invited, and vanished just as quickly. Auxiliary Research Station suddenly found itself hosting a human envoy who arrived mid-meeting and politely asked if anyone wanted tea. A Threxian. Warfleet discovered a human ship floating silently among them. Not hiding, not sneaking, just there, and no one could explain how it had gotten so close without being seen. Back at the Galactic Council, chaos reigned. This is an invasion, growled General Kovac, whether they carry weapons or not. No, said Vreltok, watching the latest reports. It's something worse. Nalathir, head of the council, looked tired. What do you mean? Vreltok tapped his pad. They aren't trying to conquer, they're showing off, proving their tech can go anywhere, anytime. And they don't care who sees it, said Ellis, the Lyranian diplomat. They want us to see it, Vreltok added. They want us to know we can't stop them. General Kovac stood. Then we must act before more ships arrive. How? Asked the Catharan ambassador. They appear and disappear like ghosts. We cannot fight what we cannot track, said a Zalari scientist. Then we must understand it first, Vreltok said. Nalathir looked at the map again. Red dots, human ships, blinked across the screen like stars. They are not hiding, she said softly. They are spreading. Like seeds, Ellis whispered. Or fire, said General Kovac. Aboard the USS Liberty, Dan Murray watched the news reports from Earth with a grin. Look at this, he said to Lisa. We've got ships near every major system now. Lisa wasn't smiling. I saw the Council's reaction. They're scared. Good, Dan said. They should be. Dan, Lisa said, crossing her arms. This isn't a game. Doesn't feel like one to me either, he said. But we're not backing down now. She sighed. Earth wants to show the galaxy we're peaceful, but we're doing it by making everyone nervous. They'll get used to it, Danny said. What if they don't? Lisa asked. What if someone decides to shoot first and ask questions later? Dan shrugged. Then we thread out before they even pull the trigger. Lisa gave him a look. You're enjoying this too much, he grinned. Maybe I am. Just then Bobby Carson walked into the room. He looked pale again. You okay? Lisa asked. Bobby nodded slowly. Yeah, just another dream. Dan frowned. What happened this time? Bobby sat down. I was standing in a field, but the sky was wrong. It was black but full of lights that moved like snakes. Dan exchanged a look with Lisa. Anything else? She asked. Bobby swallowed. There was something watching me. Not human. Not anything I recognized. Dan leaned forward. Did it say anything? Bobby shook his head. No, but I heard a voice. Not in my ears. In my head. What did it say? Bobby looked up. It said, We see you now. Dan went still. Lisa stood. Have you told anyone else about this? No, Bobby said. Should I have? No, Lisa said. Not yet. As Bobby left, Dan turned to her. This is getting worse. I know, she said. But we can't stop using the drive, not now. Why not? Dan asked. If this is causing problems. Because if we stop, Lisa said, someone else will take our place. Dan thought about that. About the signal from deep space, about the dreams, about the way time slipped sometimes. You think someone else is already using it? He said quietly. I know it, Lisa said. Outside the window, stars burned cold and silent, and somewhere far away, unseen and unknown, something stirred, something that had learned to thread. Back at the council chamber, the emergency meeting continued. They are not just showing off, said Vreltok. They are testing us. Testing what? Asked Ellis. How far they can go, Vreltok said. How much we will tolerate. General Kovac stood. Then let them test. We will remind them that power without control leads to ruin. And, if they are already beyond control? Nalathir asked. Silence followed. Because no one had an answer. Because maybe, just maybe, the humans had already changed the rules, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the shadows of the Galactic Council, a secret meeting took place. Not in the Great Hall, not among the diplomats or scientists, but deep inside the Varelian command hub, in a room that didn't exist on any map. There, 4 figures sat around, a small table, Nalathir, head of the council, Vreltok, the auxiliary scientist, a masked Lyranian named Ralek, and a human, Captain Lisa Hartley. You asked for this meeting, Nalathir said, her voice calm but firm. Why? Lisa looked at each of them before speaking. Because I know what you're afraid of. Vreltok leaned forward. And what is that? That we've changed the rules, she said. And now, you can't go back. Ralek tilted, his head slightly. Do you even understand what you've done? We built something new, Lisa said. Something better, and now everyone wants it. Or fears it, Nalathir added. Lisa nodded. Either way, it's out there. Vreltok tapped the table lightly. The council has debated many things since your arrival. War, containment, even destruction of your technology. I figured, Lisa said. Then you must also know, Ralex said, that some of us believe this tech should not be shared. Thanksing raised an eyebrow. You want to keep it from everyone? No, Vreltok said. We want to keep it from some... Meaning? Lisa asked. Ralek leaned closer. There are species in this galaxy who would use your drive for conquest, for power. If they learn how to thread, they may never stop. Lisa crossed her arms. So what? You want Earth to keep it to ourselves? Nalathir spoke softly. Yes. Lisa blinked. Really? Listen, Vreltok said. If humans control this tech, the galaxy might survive. If others do. He didn't finish the sentence. Lisa looked at each of them again. You're asking me to hide this. To stop sharing it? Only until we understand it fully, Nalathir said. You think we don't understand it? Lisa asked. I think, Vreltok said, that you don't know what it's doing to you. Lisa frowned. What do you mean? Your people are changing, Ralex said. Dreams, time slips, strange visions. These are not normal side effects. Lisa didn't answer right away. She thought about Bobby, about Dan, about herself. We're still here, she said finally. Still human. For now, Vreltok whispered. Lisa stood slowly. You want us to stop spreading the tech? Yes, Nalathir said. I'm sorry, Lisa said, but we can't do that. Ralek's eyes narrowed. Why not? Because it's not ours to hide, she said. It belongs to everyone. Now Vreltok shook his head. You're playing with fire. Maybe, Lisa said, but we already lit the match, and with that she turned and walked out. Back aboard the USS Liberty, Dan was waiting. How did it go? He asked as Lisa stepped into the room. They offered us a deal, she said. Dan raised an eyebrow. What kind of deal? They want us to stop sharing the FTL drive, she said. Keep it to ourselves. Dan stared at her. And you said no. Of course, Lisa said. Dan smiled. Good. Lisa sat down. They were serious, Dan. They think someone could misuse this tech. Someone already is, Dan said. Yeah, she said quietly. I know. Just then, Bobby Carson walked in. He looked tired again. You okay? Dan asked. Bobby shook his head. Another dream? Same as before? Lisa asked. Worse, Bobby said. This time I wasn't alone. Dan frowned. What do you mean? Bobby sat down slowly. There were others, humans, but they weren't like us. What happened? Lisa asked. Bobby swallowed. They looked at me, talked to me, but their voices were wrong, like echoes. Echoes of what? Dan asked. Bobby looked up. Of us. Dan and Lisa exchanged a long look. Did they say anything? Lisa asked. Bobby nodded. They said we're not the first. Outside the window, stars blinked silently, and somewhere far away in the dark between systems, something watched, listened, threaded. Back at the secret meeting, the three aliens sat in silence after Lisa left. Finally, Vreltok spoke. She doesn't realize what's happening. Ralek looked at him. You think she's wrong to share the tech? No, Vreltok said. I think she's too late. Nalathir looked at the screen showing human ships across the galaxy, red dots blinking like fire. If she's too late, she said, then who came first? No one answered, because none of them knew. And maybe, just maybe, neither did the humans. The first sign that something was wrong came as a whisper across the galactic network. A colony was gone, not destroyed, not attacked, just vanished. It had been a small human outpost on the edge of known space. New Hope Station orbiting a Mosai, quiet blue-green moon. No distress signals. No wreckage. No survivors. Just silence. And in that silence, fear began to grow. Aboard the USS Liberty, Dan Murray stared at the report like it might disappear if he looked away long enough. "This can't be real," he muttered. Lisa stood beside him, arms crossed, face tight with worry. "It's real," she said. "We've got confirmation from 3 different sources." Dan turned to her. "But we didn't do this." "Doesn't matter," Lisa said. "Someone's going to blame us." And they already were. News spread fast across the Galactic Council. Panic followed close behind. "This is what we warned you about," General Kovac growled during an emergency meeting. "You humans have no control over your technology," the Catharn ambassador added. Vreltok sat quietly, watching the reports, with dark eyes. "We don't know for sure it was them," Ellis, the Lyranian diplomat, tried to say. "Then who?" asked the Zilari scientist. "Because someone used a threaded FTL drive near that colony minutes before it disappeared." Silence filled the room. Nalathir, head of the council, looked at the data again. "We must find answers," she said finally. "Yes," Vreltok said. "Before it happens again." Back aboard the Liberty, Dan ran every test he could think of. He checked jump logs, sensor data, navigation records. Nothing matched the timing of the colony's disappearance. "There's no way we were involved," Dan told Lisa. "I believe you," she said. "But can you prove it?" Dan hesitated. "Not unless we find the ship that did," he admitted. Lisa frowned. "You think another human ship made the jump?" "Maybe," Dan said. "Or maybe someone else figured out how to thread." They both went quiet at that thought. "Bobby." Carson walked into the room looking pale and tired. "You okay?" Lisa asked. Bobby nodded slowly. "Had another dream." Dan looked up. "Same one?" "Worse," Bobby said. "This time I saw the colony." Lisa and Dan exchanged a look. "What happened?" Lisa asked. Bobby swallowed hard. "I saw the people. They weren't screaming. They weren't even aware. 1 second they were there. The next they just faded." "Faded?" Dan asked. Bobby nodded. "Like they were never there." Lisa rubbed her temples. "This isn't helping." "Wait," Dan said, suddenly thinking. "Did you see anything else?" Bobby closed his eyes, trying to remember. "Something," he said. "In the sky. Not a ship. Not a planet. Just a tear." Dan and Lisa froze. "A tear?" Lisa asked. Bobby opened his eyes. "Yeah. Like the sky split open for a second, and then closed again." Dan stood slowly. "That's not a dream," he whispered. Lisa looked at him. "What are you saying?" Dan tapped his pad and pulled up a new screen. "Remember when we jumped and came back 10 minutes before we left?" he asked. "How could I forget?" Lisa said. Dan pointed at the data. "What if threading doesn't just move us through space?" Lisa frowned. "What do you mean?" "What if it also affects time?" Dan said. "Or reality itself?" Lisa stared at him. "You're saying we might be causing holes in space?" she asked. "Maybe," Dan said. "Or maybe we're opening doors we don't know are there." Outside the window, stars blinked silently, and somewhere far away, unseen, something stirred. Meanwhile, tensions rose across the galaxy. The Threxian Empire demanded immediate action. "We cannot allow these humans to keep using their drive," General Kovac declared. "Not until we know what happened." The Catharn Alliance agreed. "If they won't stop themselves," the Catharn ambassador said, "then we will make them stop." Even the Lyranians, once curious about human tech, now urged caution. "This is too dangerous," Ellis said. "Until we understand what's happening, all threaded drives should be grounded." Vreltok watched it all unfold with a heavy heart. He turned to Nalathir. "Do you believe the humans caused this?" Nalathir looked at the map showing red dots across space. Human ships still jumping, still threading. "I don't know," she said softly. But if they didn't, then something worse is out there. And she wasn't the only one thinking it. On the edges of known systems, strange readings began appearing. Space rippling, time slipping, things blinking in and out of existence, and in deep space where no ships should be, something watched, something waited, something threaded.